Public comments. Would anyone care to address the board?
Right here.
Yes, please.
My name is Ron Fadness, and I'm with Bruening Rock Products. We operate 9 quarries in Houston County, and appreciated the process of the zoning ordinance revisions. I think a lot of good work has been done, and the product has certainly been improved. However, there are 2 things of a language nature that I wanted to bring to the board's attention before final consideration. We feel there's some inconsistency. Specifically in section 0110-2705 regarding non-conforming uses, there's an inconsistency between a sentence earlier in the section and later. I created a comparison. If you could submit this to the board.
Please, yes.
Analysis.
Okay.
Pass that around now, or?
You can,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Essentially, the policy is set forth at the beginning of this section saying that a non-conforming use is permitted as long as it stays within the legal parcel that it was registered in the first place. And I've been told by staff that that's the intent of what it's supposed to say. But then later on, there's language which talks about, for purposes of this section, an expansion means any increase in a dimension, size, area, volume of the mine site. Well, that's inconsistent with the first part. Obviously, anytime a quarry operates, it grows by 5, 10, 15, 20 feet. That's the nature of the beast. So the policy that it was set forth earlier, which is on the about 5th line, it says it does not expand beyond the boundaries of the legally described parcel in which the mining operation was established prior to the time it became non-conforming. That makes perfect sense. But this language a couple sentences later about that it can't increase in dimension, size, or area is inconsistent. Essentially, if it's not expanding in size, it's not in operation. So we just want to draw that to your attention before final consideration, and hope that that can be clarified to, reaffirm the earlier statement and not get hung up on a loophole of saying how the face moved 5 feet, therefore the quarry has expanded and it's illegal. And the second point, set out on the second page, there is a prohibition on new structures on quarries, which is understandable if we're talking about a permanent structure for washing or processing or something. What we'd like to point out is that most of the quarries have scales, not all, but I believe right now we have like 4 that do and 5 that don't. And to have a scale is more efficient. It's basically saving truck from having to go to another scale somewhere else. So eventually we'd like to have scales at all sites. But it appears that this could be considered triggering or ending the non-conforming use because you put in a structure. We would like it to be clarified that a scale for a truck to drive on and a 6-foot by 8-foot building for the scale operator to stand in would not trigger that. This is certainly not something that's dramatically increasing use or leading to any sort of processing or something like that. So we just want to bring that to your attention. And we'd like to see a solution that adding a scale isn't a new structure for purposes of
Expansion or
violating
whatever. Yeah.
non-conformity.
You want to leave a copy with Rick over there so that you can look at it?
Okay.
And real quick, just to kind of clarify, hopefully it helps out a little bit. I think there's going to be some confusion because when you're talking about that section, it says the boundaries that are legally described parcel, and then you're talking about expansion.
Yeah.
And maybe we got to look at this and try and make sure the wording's right. But legally described, I know we've talked many times about it being that your legal description says we want to take and use 40 acres. You're only using 5 of those 40 acres. Wouldn't necessarily be the expansion to the legally described boundary because you haven't exceeded that 40 acres. It would be if you have that 40 and you want to go to 60 acres, now it would be expanded. So that would be the one thing that I guess I'm kind of stuck on, and I think the group, and Teresa was there so she can maybe speak to, I think was more the intent of it, not that you just excavated and you took an extra 5 feet off the wall. That's not what we're looking at. It's that legally described boundary. And then the last thing I was going to mention too, on the back when we talk about structures, and we can reword that to clarify it. Structures we're talking, I think it was more intended that it was building structures, not necessarily scales.
Right.
So if that needs to be reworded, we can try and polish
And
that
that's
out.
exactly it. I mean, I
Right.
believe that I understand that the intention is as you've just said,
Yeah.
but then, you know, with some of the language, I
Yeah.
can see someone come back later saying,
Yeah.
well, you moved 5 feet, therefore it's an
Yeah.
expansion.
Well, I appreciate bringing that forward. We'll write
So-
that down and,
I think those are just
Clarify
more
that.
technical than,
yeah,
Yeah,
than- so
sounds good.
appreciate your consideration.
yeah, thank
Yep,
you.
thank you. A bit over 2 minutes, sorry. Forgot to crunch the clock. Anyone else care to address the board?
Yes, and I do see that the 2-minute rule only applies to certain people.
Yes.
No, you can take.
I will acknowledge that I have used harsh rhetoric at times in this long struggle. I had hoped for a more civil discussion and started out with that intention. My wife and I have invested thousands of hours and thousands of dollars of our time and money in this 3-year-long struggle. If we succeed, we win nothing other than the feeling of having done the right thing in service of the common good. I do believe that all of you must admit that the evidence we have brought forth is verifiable, the science accurate, and the arguments logical. If we get angry and frustrated, it is because we do not have the power to impact this decision beyond making these arguments and pleading for you to do the right thing. This is not an equal relationship. You 5 people have the power to serve the common good or not. We are dependent on your goodwill, which certainly has not always been evident. We are involved as an inferior in an unequal relationship. It is very frustrating when you do not have the power to determine the outcome of something that directly impacts our lives. The people who do have that power will not acknowledge that they hear us. They have never agreed to consider our evidence, acknowledge the legitimacy of our arguments, or even that they have heard our pleas for help. Communication is a two-way street, and I hope that you can acknowledge your part in this dysfunction. More than that, I hope you hear our plea to you to act for the common good. Please help us protect our property, our environment, our infrastructure, and our health. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you this morning? First off, I'd like to thank you for your service, but I would like to ask, just because the one gentleman from industry had an extra minute or so, I may go 30 seconds or a minute over. If that's all right, may I have your permission? My name is Jeremy Chips. From La Crescent, Minnesota. I've been here about 17, 18 years, from Chicago. I was a mason. I know sand very well. These hands know sand as I built hotels using concrete and building stone walls. I worked in quarries in Massachusetts, so I know something about it. 20 years in the chemical industry consulting to teach about air and water quality from one of the largest chemical companies in the world. They called me in, Ecolab. I worked for them. For the past 10 years, I've been in the healthcare and insurance industry, running the Midwest region for Mayo Clinic, Mayo Global Business Solutions. I do know something about air, water, healthcare, and business for 30 years. I ask you 2 things this morning, and only 2 things. In the greatest of graciousness, I ask you to please change your vote. You are soon to make to no on frac sand mining. I've given this a lot of thought and listened to you carefully, and I thank you for all of the things that you've shared, and I see the great depth of your thoughts on these things, and I've listened very carefully to the planning and zoning and the research committees, as you know I have been. But I ask you to also do a second thing. On Thursday morning, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear Maureen McCollum on Wisconsin Public Radio on Thursday talking about Trempealeau, Wisconsin, and the frac sand mining there. I ask you graciously if you would please listen to that in Thursday, and each time they say the word Trempealeau, please put in the words Houston County instead, for I think there will be a window into our future. Please listen. If we do this, we shall see new people who think of moving to La Crescent and Caledonia and lovely places like it, but they will tell their realtors, no, maybe not, honey. Let's not move to Houston County. They won't be moving to Houston County because builders will see a decline and shops will see a decline and business will see a decline as we look to a lesser economy, I believe. If you build it, they will come. Who will come? All of them will come. If you vote for this, not only will the media come, but it will mark the start of many wars to come. Not only is Houston County being watched here in the Cooley region, but elsewhere in the U.S. The Cooley region is quickly coming into national view, as the Preston tire burning plant and as did CapEx. The people all came, not from around here just only, but from 3 states. They will come, I promise you. The organizations with the lawyers and the nonprofits and all of them, they will come. The media and the television shows like a circus. Rachel Maddow, the Ed Show, will come. And the Ed Show's already looking at doing a story about this subject in Minnesota. Ed Schultz lives in Minnesota. If you build this, they will come. I ask you, in closing, please protect the sand miners. Please protect the mines that are here and the families who make an important living from the mines. But protect the rest of Houston County economy so we don't end up like Hickston, Wisconsin, near Black Rock Falls. There, every other home is now for sale with signs up in front of their yards, and the townspeople are all moving away. The good economy? Not on your life, not for them. Let's look at Wisconsin. Let's do the analysis together and look at the science together. Bring this back a little, I implore you. Save Houston County, and let's protect you, the commissioners, as not going down in history as the ones in 100 years who may just be about to make a mortal mistake for us all. Please, let's review the science and come in Thursday and let's all listen to the Wisconsin Public Radio on Thursday together. The future, ladies and gentlemen, is in your hands, and I promise you, they will come. Let's spare ourselves, let's spare you, and stop them all from coming. Let's stop the media circus that will be coming and the lawyers and everything for the years of warfare that will continue and continue. Stop the press, stop the public, and let's do what everybody in La Crescent is beginning to just find out throughout Houston County. My gosh, the Houston County Commissioners and the Planning and Zoning is about to vote for this without the due diligence scientific research that needs to be done. Air and water, I teach it and did for healthcare for years. I implore you, and I thank you. Please call me if you have questions, and thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment?
Good morning, Commissioners. Kent Holen, Houston Township. Even before the first legal spoonful has been extracted, industrial frac sand mining has fractured the cohesiveness of our entire county. How can anyone believe that allowing this heavy industry into our midst will do anything but greatly compound our dissension? And how can anyone find any benefit in that? These are rhetorical questions, but as a favor to all of your constituents, could each of you, who have not already done so, please explain in some way, in some public forum, at some time before the final vote, the reasoning behind your position on industrial frac sand mining? Thank you.
Donna Buckbee, Kent Township. Last week, kind of buried in the consent agenda was the letter received from the Money Creek town officers. And so that, no one said what that was, but I just want to point out that I believe, it's my understanding that there was a unanimous request by all the Money Creek officers that this county would ban frac sand mining.
Would anyone else like to address the board?
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Dan Griffin with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Normally, I do not attend Commissioner meetings, but I must respond to remarks Commissioner Zawinski made last week's meeting about me, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Ordinance Study Committee. Justin, you brought up 4 points. Let's look at them one by one. First, you allude to a number of meetings held outside the study committee where decisions were made, and you referred specifically to a meeting that you walked in on where 4 people were meeting. Those 4 people were Glenn Cruz, Rick Frank, Bob Scanlon, and me. We met to discuss 2 letters I had received from citizens concerning a permit that had been issued earlier that had nothing to do with mining. I tried to show you those letters, and you were asked to join the discussion, but you declined. Since the study committee was to start in just a few minutes, obviously the draft ordinance did come up. But as chairman of the Planning Commission, I do regularly visit with the zoning staff and the vice chair. The inference here is that open meeting laws were violated. If you or anyone here is aware of an instance where an open meeting law was violated, I would urge you to file a legal complaint. Secondly, you charge that some things were pushed through the study committee at the last minute that no one had time to consider. The sentence that seems to be concerning you here is in the industrial mining definition. After the January 6th public hearing, the study committee met 2 times, on January 8th and January 13th. At the end of the January 8th meeting, you wanted to define sand mining in excess of 60,000 yards as industrial and thus prohibited. But by the January 13th meeting, your position had changed. In the last minutes of this meeting, which lasted for over 2 hours, you insisted on changing the definition to say, any sand mine for purposes other than agricultural or construction would be considered industrial and thus prohibited. You confirmed, when questioned, that you needed this language in the draft for political reasons, and went on to say that this was all about politics. A third point you make is that you and I had several phone conversations where I referred to we, and you do not know who we is. First of all, you and I only had 2 phone conversations in the last 60 days. The we I referred to in our phone conversation was Glenn Cruz, the county attorney, and me. I stated that we believe the last sentence in industrial definitions should be changed back to the original language of 60,000 yards because of enforcement issues. Glenn and I considered it prudent to talk to the county attorney before we voted on an ordinance amendment. The last point you made was regarding insubordination. This is not the first time I heard you use that word. Justin, I do not work for you as an individual. Those of us in the Planning and Zoning Commission serve at the will of the county board as a whole. Justin, I never told anyone to shut your mouth, don't stir the pot, and watch what you say. Now, if you were referring to a phone conversation I had with Commissioner Chomey on January 26th, that was the first conversation I had with Commissioner Chomey regarding the language of the draft ordinance. And that conversation was 4 days after the public hearing, 4 days after the vote. Commissioners, I believe this is a good ordinance that will protect the county from the negative impacts of large-scale mining, but not hinder our existing operations. Thank you.
Might want to stick around, Dan, because I'll have something on the comment period
You and I
for you.
can talk, Justin.
Yeah, we should.
Thank you.
First reading of facts.
Response.
That's fine. I can handle it, guys.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Let's move on. Brian?
We'll have some public comment.
I have a public comment.
We typically allow 20 or 15 minutes. We've gone a bit over.
Well, I have to say that the public comments are typically 2 minutes
Yeah.
apiece. This one was clearly longer than 2
Yeah,
minutes.
and Jeremy's was longer. I'm sorry, but, I forgot to hit the button on this thing.
Could I please hear, I would like to hear,
Okay.
just if she could.
Can you make it brief?
Yes, I can.
Please.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond to a couple of things. One is, I understand Mr. Fadness's concern in trying to move to parcel language rather than the definition of the mine. You need to remember, however, I was on the original Frac Sand Study Committee. One of our last 2 meetings, Attorney Jay Squires spoke. He made it clear why he wanted to change that language from about non-conforming mines to read any increase in size or intensity of activity, because he felt, and his advice to you was that these non-conforming, or what are typically referred to here as registered mines, need to be gotten under control. And Commissioner Walter, you very wisely stated that that was one of the goals of the new ordinance was to get these new things under control. So, you know, you need to realize that if a parcel is a 1,000-acre parcel, you're then allowing a mine to expand to 1,000 acres. And I don't think that's what you want to happen with non-conforming mines. Very wise, Commissioner Walter, to be concerned about getting those registered mines under control. Second comment, this is contentious. It's not easy for anyone, least of all probably the board, and you have my empathy in that. I have to say, though, that it does appear that things are not being done in the open. I gave 2 comments to the chair of the Planning Commission at the public hearing, and he chose not to read them. Why would he choose to read some and not others? It was very clear, it was very easy, it was also written legibly. So it does appear, and the fact that I can understand there is no legal requirement to videotape meetings such as that, which fit into a gray area on whether the open meeting law fully applies or not. But by not allowing videotaping, you really have no record. And the notes that are issued on those meetings have been pretty sketchy. They don't really show what happened during the meetings. So I encourage the board, please be as open as possible, because when you close things down and shut them down and allow things about this topic to happen in a meeting that is not held in the light of day, people are going to think something is going on. And the way to resolve that is to be as open as you possibly can. I have to say that many of the recommendations the Planning Commission made are contrary to the advice of Attorney Jay Squires. That non-conforming mine language was in there specifically not to shut down a mine, but to force that mine to go into a situation where they were required to implement or to apply for an interim use permit. The Planning Commission has taken out all of the interim use permit language, and that was recommended by Attorney Jay Squires. There's a lot of study that's gone on. A lot of knowledge has been lost because you shut down one frac sand committee and started another. And I think we need to look at all of the information that's out there and listen to everyone. Listen to people who are mining, listen to people who want to mine, and listen to those who have concerns. Thank you for the time, and I really appreciate you letting me speak.
You're welcome. Thank you.